Well, hello, everybody. We are down to 8. Brandon Meisner with you, also joined by David Albertson, Matt Witwicky, Justin Palizzi, and Chris Ferguson. Chuck Bittner will not be with us tonight. We are down to 8. We will talk about every playoff game from Saturday. The number 1 seeds in every region advanced. Northwest Missouri won their annual unofficial match with Harding. Ferris State beat Grand Valley again. And there were 2 dominant performances in Super Region 4. But tonight, we start with the game of the day. And that game was Shepherd at Notre Dame. Shepherd won 38-34. Notre Dame struck first, but Shepherd scored 21 straight to lead 21-7. And then Notre Dame was able to put the drive together before the half and scored with 2 seconds left on a crisp brim pass to Reese Perkins. It was a back-and-forth second half that saw Notre Dame College take the lead twice in the fourth, but Tyson Bagent connected from 23 yards out with 1 second left for the win. So Bagent was 30 for 50 for 301 yards and 3 touchdowns, and Brim was 23 for 35 for 347 and 3 touchdowns in a losing effort for Notre Dame College. Nonetheless, it was an extremely enjoyable game and an incredibly close contest as we thought it would be.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was a great game. I was kind of watching it a bit early on, and it was a lot of fireworks. I'm sure it was a lot of fun for us to watch, kind of a back-and-forth game like that. I'm sure for both coaching staffs, it was a nerve-wracking afternoon, but it made it fun for us and the fans. So a great game, both teams. I said it last week. I thought the winner of this game was the favorite to win the Super Region 1 there. So I think Shepherd has the inside track to that at this point. But a fantastic football game there for both teams. And the Shepherd just had the ball last, and they got the win.
Well, we when we did our pick'ems last week on this game, I think we all struggled to figure out who to pick because of the fact that these were 2 so evenly matched teams. Mm-hmm. And I think this game was every bit of that. It's congrats to Shepherd, but it's a shame that there has to be someone to advance because they both really did deserve to advance to the next round.
Yeah, I was impressed in watching the game about how Shepherd was kind of leading the way early. Looked like they were going to have a chance to possibly pull away, yes. and then Notre Dame just kept on coming and stayed with them and created a really good ball game. I mean, very evenly matched as we mentioned a moment ago, and I just once again very impressed with the quarterback play at Shepherd and the ability to go ahead and continue to see how they're able to run their offense through his arm and the way Bagent can throw, and then of course at the end getting the big play for the win. I mean, it was just probably our best football game of the day, and really enjoyable to watch, especially with that early start.
Ernie McCook, the head coach at Shepherd, is going to join us here in a second. But before we do that, I really think that Notre Dame needs to be commended because of the running backs that they've lost. First-year head coach in Mickey Mental, and look at what they've done to win 1 playoff game, get to the second round, and if not for an incredibly great play by the leading Harlan Hill Trophy contender, they might have gone to overtime or they might have found themselves victorious. So, in my opinion, a great job by him this year.
Yeah, no question about it.
All right, so that was, you're seeing now on your screen, that was the game-winning touchdown pass from Tyson Bagent. And it sends Shepherd to the regional finals where they will have a rematch with Kutztown. Joining us now is the head coach from Shepherd, Ernie McCook. Coach, thank you very much for joining us tonight. It's a pleasure to have you here.
It's great to be with you guys, and thanks for having us on.
Our national, our South Atlantic columnist, Chuck Bittner, who will be announced to be the national columnist at some point here soon, says that Shepherd has the best atmosphere in the Northeast. At least that's his opinion. So before we talk about anything, any aspect of the game, you had 4,857 at Rams Stadium yesterday. Share what you thought of the atmosphere with us, please.
I think by far it was our best atmosphere of the year. People were still in the holiday spirit. We have a lot of fans that enjoy Shepherd football. They love the excitement of it. The fact that 75% of our alumni live within a 100-mile radius of the institution, I think helps us out, and just the success we've had over the last 20 years. And people enjoy Shepherd football. It's a great environment to bring your family. It's easy in, easy out, and there's not a bad seat in the house.
Well, let's talk about that game. You had, as I mentioned, you had built up a 21-7 lead in the first half, and then Notre Dame scored before the end of the first half. So that lead let it slip away. Talk about your team's poise in that kind of game.
Sure. We were feeling really good when we had a chance to score, to go up 21-7 with 1:07 left in the half. And we knew we were going to receive the opening kickoff of the second half. And, every coach talks about wanting to win the middleweight, the last 4 minutes of the first half and the first 4 minutes of the second half. And I really felt that was kind of going in our favor. I was really feeling good at that point. And the fact that they were able to drive down the field in 1:05 and score a touchdown, credit to Notre Dame College and their football program. Right. They were going to fight. They were going to, use every second they could. Going in at halftime, we talked about it, said, hey, we have to be productive coming out in the second half. We have to, can't let this, we got to continue to maintain momentum. And we turned the ball over. We had the ball bounce off of Josh Gontaric's chest, bounce up in the air, and number 13 for Notre Dame, who is a tremendous football player, had the interception and set it up for them to take a shot and score a touchdown to tie it up 21-21, which, we were in a battle then. We knew it was going to be a whole 4 quarters, and we needed to continue to fight. We had a letdown in special teams, which gave them the lead. We fought back to take the lead, and then their drive there at the end, leaving us with 28 seconds left, was, pretty. It was pretty stressful, but you start as a coach. The stress. I've had a million texts ask me if my heart's okay. My heart was fine. Where it really would have been a stressor if I had to line up for a 41-yard field goal to tie it up. Been the stressor. But it was, it was a credit to our guys. It was a great football game. And I think one of the columnists earlier said it's a shame somebody had to lose, because both teams really left it all out there on the field. Notre Dame's got a great program. They've won a lot of football games. They have a recipe for great success. And for us to be able to find a way to win in the end I feel great credit to our team, our players, our coaches, that we're able to. Then there was a no quit attitude. We were going to do our best. We're going to use every second that we could, every play that we could, and we just happen to have a kid that makes a lot of great plays for us.
So before we talk about the kid that makes the great plays, you talked about Notre Dame's recipe. What were they doing that was giving you so many fits?
Well, I think they're really fast on defense. I think they have a lot of team speed. They want to put a lot of pressure on you. I think they have great balance in their offense. They're committed to running the football. But then they have 2 really big receivers that they feel that they can get the ball to on the outside. And they're good on special teams. They make you prepare all week for a lot of different looks. So you could tell that their coaches put a lot of effort into their game plans, and they're putting stress on you. And that's what they did. And it was a heck of a challenge. The last time we played them was in 2018, and it was my first year as the head coach, and it was Tyson's first start as our quarterback. And we lost one there on the road in Ohio, and we had a chance to convert a 2-point conversion, tie that up and maybe go to overtime. So every game we've had with them has been, in the last 4 meetings, has been a really tight ball game. It's gone down to the last quarter, last series. And so it's what we expected with this football team.
So on the play that we've talked about, and the play I think everybody in Division II was talking about yesterday, Tyson had to step out and roll out of the pocket. Is that scramble drill something you work on in practice, or is that just something that is instinctual in him?
No, we work on the scramble drill in practice, and when you go back and look at that play, everybody did exactly what they were supposed to do. And they did what coach is coaching to do, and Tyson was able to see Josh, streaking across the back of the end zone. He threw a nice pass to him, and I think Josh made a great catch there and getting his feet in bounds. And every time I've looked at the play last night and today, I'm like, wow, what a catch, what a throw, what a catch, what great execution with it. And the play prior to that, to set it up so we would get in that position, be able to have a shot at throwing in the end zone, was, the ball, the play was designed to go to the field, and Notre Dame did a great job taking it away. Our single side receiver did a tremendous job finding open space. Tyson, who I think has great vision, can see the field, found Ryan Beach and put us in a position where we were, I think it was 21 yards out, 23 yards out.
So you had talked about the stress of having to rely on a field goal. Mm-hmm. The only thing more stressful than that would be not having the chance to kick the field goal at all. Well, because the clock was running out, was there ever a point where you thought, hey, just get rid of it? Or are you glad that that he did what? Obviously, you're glad he did what he did.
Absolutely. But you know what? When the ball was snapped, I really was. We had 10 seconds on the clock. We had one timeout left, and we had a timeout prior to that. And I told our offensive coordinator, "Hey, the entire field is wide open. Do it. Use the entire call sheet. Don't worry about feeling like you need to call a sideline pass or anything like that." So I felt pretty confident that if it was incomplete, we would still have a chance to kick the field goal. And the play did get extended where, having hindsight or looking at it right now, I don't know if we got tackled in the field of play if I would have been able to get the timeout done in time. That would have been a tough one.
Well, we've talked about Tyson, I think more, at least as much or more than any other player on our show this year. He's a Harlan Hill candidate. You've had, in my mind, at least 3 really great ones in a row with Jeff Ziemba and then Connor Jessup and now him. What makes him different than the other 2?
It's easy for me to say this on this show, but Tyson Bagent's the best football player I've ever coached. He's a really talented guy. But the work that he puts in to preparing himself to being the best player he can, as far as film study. He's the guy who gets all the receivers together in the summertime and the off season to throw. And when he does do that, it's just not going out and throwing routes on air. He's installing concepts, and he's just a great team leader. He's the best player on our team. He's the best teammate on our team. He's a tremendous leader, and he's been this way since his freshman year of 2018. I think, when you think about the teams that have had success coming through COVID, a lot of the reason that we are where we are today is we have leadership from guys like Tyson Bagent and a number of other kids in our program that have helped let us through COVID, where we've just kept the team together to be able to compete in this tournament.
So Coach, I just want to drop a little nugget in here. One of the fun things that we do around here, especially on the website, is we actually do fantasy football. At the Division II level, we do fantasy football. And Tyson Bagent was picked 3rd in the draft. And I happened to pick him. It was our first round selection. So it was amazing to watch him play the entire year. And yes, I think that's part of the reason why, we focus so much on him too, is because of all the big numbers and big yards. But one of the things that we kind of saw this game was you didn't see like those huge numbers. I mean, he only had 301 yards passing. But I think the making of a special player, he made that play at the end of the game. So I just wanted to point that out to you.
I appreciate that. And I'm glad you drafted Tyson, and I'm hoping you're getting a ton of points for it. And I hope we can rack up fantasy points for you as well. Tyson, he obviously wants to compete, wants to be the best that he can be. but he's more worried about wins and losses than he is the statistics. I think we're all in our program rooting for, and our fan base is rooting for Tyson to have great numbers and really have a chance to win the Harlan Hill. I'd be lying to you if I said it didn't matter. It does matter, because I can't imagine there is a more deserving player to win a trophy like this. And again, he is a special human being. The things that he does that are away from football, the kindness that he has for the people around him and the fans and alumni and stuff like that, he's a great guy to root for.
Hey, Coach, let me have a chance to ask you. You guys have Kutztown in front of you now at their place. You guys had a chance to play them earlier in the year, a game where actually Tyson was fantastic, threw for almost 400 yards. And how do you guys need to go about things differently, armed with what you already know from that first contest?
Sure. Well, what we do know is Coach Clemens at Kutztown, it does a great job preparing his team. They are a tremendous coaching staff that will have their team ready to play. They'll have a great plan in place. But we need to, one thing is make ourselves difficult to beat. We need to take care of the football. We need to make the ordinary play extraordinary. When you look back at that game, we had an interception in an untimely spot that Tyson wish if he could have it back today, he would take it back. We had a blocked field goal attempt that went for a touchdown. So, we hurt ourselves against a really well-coached, good football team. So if we let things like that happen on Saturday, it's going to be a tough road for us. But if we execute fundamentally sound football, and I use the phrase make the ordinary play extraordinary. That means take the hitch and get 6-7 yards. Don't worry, and not everything has to be a 70-yard touchdown. Run, block, tackle, do the things necessary, have great communication as a team. That's what's going to give us an opportunity to compete. And that'll be our focus all week. Make sure that we have our game plan, our kids know the game plan, and that we have the opportunity to be able to execute the game plan on Saturday. And we know it's a tough ball game. It's going to be a tough team, and we're both playing for a lot of pride here. So it should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, Coach, and we had a person in the comments who said there's a Bavarian place down the street down there at Shepherd. It's a pretty good place to eat. Is there other good places in Shepherd there? It's pretty good to eat when someone wants to visit you guys and get some good food in the area.
Oh yeah, there's some great places. The Bavarian Inn it sits right on the river, Potomac River, overlooks the river. Great German food. There's a number of other places in town. I'm a pretty low maintenance guy, man. I'm a King's Pizza guy with a cheesesteak sub or something like that. Unless I'm going to the Bavarian Inn to drink a beer or something like that, that's probably, I'm going to go get a slice of pizza or something like that.
Awesome.
Right.
But there are good places in Shepherdstown. It's a great town. I'll tell you what, the best place to eat in Shepherdstown, I'll give it to you right now. Betty's restaurant. It's a breakfast place, has the best biscuits and gravy you can get.
Nice.
Very good. So, all right, well, Coach, congratulations on the win. Congratulations on advancing. Best of luck this week against Kutztown. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
Thank you.
See you, Coach.
Bye.
All right. That was Ernie McCook, the head coach at Shepherd. His Rams advance in the playoffs. Let's move to Super Region 4, guys. Another team that advanced in the playoffs. Angelo State with a 20-7 win over Nebraska Kearney. Angelo led 13-0 at the half. They led 20-0 with 11:31 left in the third. Get this, Nebraska Kearney, 117 yards rushing, 86 yards passing for 203 total. Angelo held TJ Davis to 115 yards of total offense for him. And Alfred Greer rushed for 152 yards and 1 touchdown for Angelo. So an incredibly impressive job by the Rams against TJ Davis, another candidate for the Harlan Hill.
Yeah, I thought, Brandon, that in watching them, once again, that's 2 straight weeks where they've had the opponent at 0 points at halftime. You're going to win a lot of football games that way in the playoffs. And in taking a look at them, Alfred Greer had a big 64-yard run that kind of felt like it broke things open a bit, even though it was the initial score, because TJ Davis was getting no traction in his running game at all. Finished with 12 yards on the ground. There hasn't been a whole lot of teams that have made him look that way. And so when they were able to shut him down, I was immediately thinking, now they're going to be forced to the air a lot more than they're wanting to be. And that's really not kind of what Kearney's trying to do. So Angelo's speed, and then they have a 3-headed monster running the ball where they're basically giving guys anywhere between about 6, 7, 8 carries a game, all 3 of them, and getting a lot of yards. And so in watching them, I mean, they're just going to be a tough squad for just about anybody because they run the ball effectively. They're dangerous enough in the passing game, but they defend very well. And they're very battle tested. They've played plenty of playoff teams here along the way. So before, you take a look, they've played Lindenwood, Commerce, and others. So I'm very impressed with what I'm seeing from Angelo.
Yeah, for sure, and I agree with that. And that was my worry with Nebraska Kearney coming into this game, is playing a really stout defense and forcing to play off what they don't want to do kind of deal. It happened versus Northwest, and then it happened again versus Angelo State. The 2 best defenses they played, they couldn't do what they want to do on offense, and it really hamstrung them. So that was my one worry with Kearney, along with that defense that has some holes in it. And I agree with you, Whit, watching that game, that long touchdown run really broke things open for Angelo, and they kind of were in complete control after that point, and we're just watching the game online.
Yeah.
Well, guys, let's go ahead and bring on the head coach at Angelo State. He is Jeff Girsch. And, Coach, thank you for joining us tonight. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Well, it's great to be here. I appreciate you guys getting me on and taking the time and talk a little football about Angelo State.
Well, it's funny because we talked about Notre Dame College with previously with the Shepherd head coach, and now I want to talk about Nebraska Kearney with you. But in my mind, it's a compliment that we're talking about them because, we talked about TJ Davis a number of times on the show this year, and you guys shut down a very powerful offense. It's very impressive. How did you do that?
Well, it's hard. The kid is so talented, watching him play all year and, in a great conference, watching what he did and the numbers he put up and the success he had throughout the year. And when you face a Josh Lynn coach team, you're going to face a team that has a great scheme like that. So, our coaching staff just did a great job of preparing, for that type of player. We're good on defense. We got a lot of kids that are 5th-year seniors, a couple 6th-year seniors with COVID and that. So we had a lot of experience there, and our kids just went out and executed an unbelievable game plan. Adam Clark, our defensive coordinator, has just done an outstanding job with these guys, and to limit TJ and his numbers and his success on Saturday, that was a big reason that if we were going to win a football game, we had to limit him, and we did that. And fortunately, we were did enough on offense to score points, and when you're playing really good defense like that and can get some points on the board, you're a dangerous football team. I'm
curious. You mentioned Josh Lynn. He was obviously in the Lone Star at Eastern New Mexico before he was at Nebraska Kearney. Is he, from what I understand, he's doing things a little bit differently than he did at Eastern, or is it the same scheme and you guys were ready for it?
Well, it's a lot different. He was under center, and he was running triple option, true triple with fullback dive and all that for all those years. And, so there were some things that were like it, but the tendencies of the option itself, but this was a lot more like the lead option stuff and flex bone type offense that he runs. And, TJ fit that really well for a scheme.
Well, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, Coach, let me ask you, we're speaking about, your defense quite a bit. I've had a chance to watch you guys play Lindenwood earlier in the year, had a chance to watch you guys play Duluth, then obviously what you guys just did this last weekend against Kearney. Every time I watch you, I happen to watch number 24 on your defense quite a bit. Hunter Kyle, seems like he plays sideline to sideline as a backer. Every time I watch, he's getting 8 stops, 10 stops, 12 stops, a lot of tackles for loss. What can you tell us about Hunter, Kyle? We haven't mentioned him on our show yet, but he's one of the better defenders I've run across this year.
Well, there's no doubt. He's a 4-year starter for us. He started as a redshirt freshman and hasn't missed a game, all the way through. Just an outstanding football player. I mean, he's a 6'2", 220-pound kid that can, runs sub 5, 5 flat in the 40. And you mentioned it. He's sideline to sideline all day. He has one gear, and it's full speed ahead all the time. And just an outstanding football player. I mean, he was named Lone Star Conference Defensive Player of the Year this year, and rightfully so. I mean, the kid is just everywhere on the field. But the neat thing about it is we feel we got about 3 of those type of kids on defense with, some other guys in the back end and some D-line guys. So, but Hunter is something special, and we're sure going to miss him in a year.
Coach, also, while we're kind of speaking, you just mentioned the number 3. I always say when I watch you guys, you have that 3-headed monster at the running back position. Obviously, Alfred Greer got the love, the other day with the long run where he broke loose and kind of gave you guys a little bit of a cushion. But what can you guys tell us about kind of your philosophy with sharing the love with those 3 backs on a pretty regular basis?
Well, it works for them. That's what it comes down to. They're very supportive of each other. It's a selfish, unselfish room. I mean, those guys cheer on each other, and what we've done by playing all 3 of those kids, if we kept them fresh, throughout the season as well, and they all bring a different aspect to it. Nate Amayabu, Nathan's our leading rusher, was leading rusher in the Lone Star Conference. He's a big bruising type running back. He's about 6 foot, 240-pound kid, and runs hard. And they just bring different things. Alfred's obviously a little bit more of a speed guy and
right.
hits things, and he's your home run threat all day. And then CJ Odom, another running back for us, is more kind of like in between the two. He's got really good speed, but he's a bruising runner as well. So they just complement each other so well, and it's crazy to watch. Usually those kids want the ball every single down and never want to come out of the game, and these kids rotate in and they just
right.
they support each other. It's a really good room.
Coach, let me ask. I was watching your interview on the LSC preseason media day, which seems like probably forever ago right now.
It does.
And I recall you mentioning that you guys were returning a lot of starters, and you guys are going to be a very kind of tenured bunch. What can you tell us about that group and kind of the culture you guys have as a result of it?
Well, there's no doubt we returned. I think 9 starters or 10 starters on defense from the 19 season, and I think 7 or 8 on offense that year as well. So all those kids made commitments to come back to Angelo State. A lot of these kids have graduated with master's degrees, and they were ready to move on in the sense of being successful and done academically. But they were committed to this program. They were committed to what we had built in 19 when we took over here. They were committed to continue to build on that, and that was the biggest thing. These kids are just so committed to the culture, the belief. They bought into what we were selling them, I guess, in this. And you see it in every aspect of the program. You see it in the, the way these kids attack the weight room, the way they attack the classroom. We talk about, winning the day and pulling the rope and all those types of things that you use to build that culture. And pulling the rope means, what did I do? Am I pulling the rope in the same direction? Or I'm on the other end pulling it away from, not being a teammate. And our guys just understand this, man. They just do a great job of it. And our senior leadership, these kids are a special, special group. I'm just so proud to have them back in the program for this year and continue to put us on the map.
Sure. Let me ask, in consecutive weeks here, you guys have seen Duluth, obviously in the week 1 of the playoffs, a team who kind of likes to throw the ball over the top a little bit. Also, you didn't really know what was going on with the quarterback spot there. Probably had a little bit of curiosity with what you're going to face. And then this next week, you get someone completely different in terms of offensive approach that was much different than what Duluth does. Basically running a kind of a new school version of the option. And now you're going against Colorado Mines. Kind of what was it like preparing for some of those other 2 opponents, and kind of what were you keying on? And then looking forward to Colorado Mines, what do you see?
Well, for sure with Carney, it was keying on TJ. You got to make sure you keep him under wraps the best you can, and that's hard to do. I mean, we sacked him 4 times, and I would have told you it would have been 10. We had a chance to sack him on, and he makes you miss and slips out and gets out in the open and runs around. But just a talented player. With Mines, it's kind of a funny story. Coach Brandon there, we were supposed to play in 20 as well as 21. We had it set up to play those games, and then obviously COVID hit and screwed up the schedule for everybody. So we had some film on them that we had already exchanged with them, and they had some on us. So we prepared for those guys that summer. Going into the 20 season, and then obviously didn't get to play. So we're very familiar with Mines. Coach Sturbeck, their offensive coordinator, is a guy that I've coached against over the years as well in different spots. But they're just such a good football team. They're physical. They're what you expect. When you hear about Mines, they're going to be disciplined. They're going to play really hard, and they play really good defense as well. So we're excited about it. But preparing for somebody different, like the triple or the option or the different things that we see, we feel like the Lone Star Conference provides us great opportunity because we face a lot of really talented football teams in there. And then our non-conference schedule, we went out and played Lindenwood, that was mentioned earlier. We went out and played Central Washington, that was a playoff team. We went and played Chadron State. We went and made sure we got those 11 D2 games because this group of seniors and this team deserved 11 games. And, that was a huge benefit for us, I think, not taking a bye week and getting out there and playing those football games and playing really good football teams. Lindenwood, that quarterback at Lindenwood was as good as player as we've seen all year up to TJ. But it's just exciting. Our kids, they're excited about preparation each and every week. So going into Mines this week, you got to stop the running back. I think he's a really good football player. I think he has close to 1,400 yards, rushing, and the quarterbacks, I think he's like 70% percentage completion rate. And so there's great things there. You got to stop on that side of the ball, but then you got to move it, on offense. And I think I think they're giving up 100 yards total rushing on the year or something like that. And again, that's pretty good defense. So we'll have our hands full with it, but we feel like we're a pretty good football team too, and hopefully they'll have their hands full as well.
Well, all of us really appreciate the fact, and want to give you guys kudos for the fact that you guys go and find games the way you do, and you find competitive games and games that will frankly help you guys out come this time of year. I mean, the fact that you guys had the strength of schedule you did put you in a good spot to obviously get the 2 seed that you did also. So, I mean, we really like the fact that you guys go test yourself like that. But let me ask you, Coach, this week, you guys are obviously going to have to get on a flight, head on out to Golden, Colorado. How does your practice week change a little bit with that in mind? And when are you guys thinking of going out and all that good stuff?
Well, we'll leave here on Friday morning. I think we're flying out around 10 o'clock. So, it won't change much. We'll practice normal, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and what we do with our schedule. And then Friday is the travel day. Fortunately, we've had, we had to go to Central Wash on a flight. We had to go to Chadron on a flight. So we're a little used to it in that part. We had to drive to Lindenwood. That wasn't very fun. If we had to drive, I wasn't I wouldn't be too excited about that one. But, getting on the flight and going, our kids are used to that.
This is easier than a typical Lone Star trip, isn't it?
Well, I'll tell you, I do like the 1 o'clock games. I'll tell you that much. Coming home from Kingsville, it's when a 7 o'clock kickoff. You don't get home till Sunday at 10 o'clock in the morning. For Lone Star games. So I'm enjoying the afternoon kickoffs. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Your pastor doesn't like it when you're late for church because you're at a game the night before.
Exactly.
So I'm curious about something. At one point you were 4-2. We had you, in the top 25 to start the season. I think that the second loss might have knocked you out, and obviously 4-2 is not where you wanted to be. You've rattled off 7 straight. What's been the key to that stretch?
Well, I think offensively we really started to gel. We had some injuries early in the season. We lost our quarterback for a couple games, and then him coming back. We actually won the 2 games with our backup in there, who came in and did an unbelievable job for us. And then we lost when Zach got back. That first game back, he just wasn't wasn't himself, a little rusty. So each week he was getting better and better on that part of it. And shoot, we were playing really good teams. West Texas A&M beat us that week and made us 4-2. And they're a good football team. They lost a couple games early, but they're a really good football team. So I just think the preparation of playing the Lone Star Conference schedule is really helped us. I mean, it's gotten us each week. You have to play great or you can lose. And, that's the biggest thing. I think from top to bottom, Lone Star Conference has a lot of football teams that will prepare you for the playoffs when you get there. I mean, you see so many different types of offenses. You see unbelievable athletes out of it. So you got to go out and compete against that each and every week. And I think that played a big part of it.
Yeah, Coach, I know you're worried about Mines right now, but you just came out this past couple of weeks that the Lone Star and the Great Northwest Athletic Conference are going to have a scheduling agreement going forward. And you guys have already played Central Washington, and you'll get like a Western Oregon, Simon Fraser, those kind of teams in there. Are you excited to see that for a couple new challenges going forward? What's your general thoughts on the scheduling agreement with them?
Well, I'm really excited about the scheduling agreements because it's hard to find games. It's really hard to, when you're playing the Lone Star, when, a lot of conferences, the RMAC has one open week. Everybody else is, there's a lot of closed conferences. So trying to find those games, and I'm not interested in going to play the Division I games and doing that. I think if you're going to be a true contender to compete in the playoffs in Division II, you need to play Division II teams and play that schedule so you get the strength of schedule. And I think that's so important. I think how many times have we seen a 10-0 team all of a sudden, like we had a couple of years ago, Tarleton State dropped from 1 into 2 in the regional rankings, because they played one less Division II game. So we want to go out and find as many games as we can in the Division II world. So adding them, it made my dry erase board here on my left a lot better when it says what we have open dates still, so we filled those open dates. But, it's exciting to have them in, they're good football programs out there. Simon Fraser came down and played us this year. So, we're excited to add them and get them in the rotation.
Coach, I've got it off. It's about the schedule, but it's not something that many would think about. When you did you fly to Central Washington?
We did.
Okay. Did you land in Seattle or did you land in like Yakima?
We landed in Yakima.
Okay. I was just curious for the educational purposes of it, because there would have been a lot of stuff to learn if you would have landed in Seattle. And that's one of the things, if anybody's watched this, they know I'm an absolute opponent of conferences that don't schedule non-conference games. And
Agreed.
Part of the problem, in my opinion, is because a kid who is on let's pick a team that doesn't make the playoffs, let's say a sub 500 team, they might see the same schedule for all 4 years that they play. They might go nowhere new, nowhere interesting. But for instance, you're going to go to Golden, Colorado. Your kids might never have seen the Rockies before. They're going to see that. And that's why I was curious, because I see the added benefit. It's something nobody would think of, but I see the benefit of going to the Pacific Northwest when you've got Lone Star kids, and Texas is so big, you got some kids that might never have been out of the state, and
no doubt.
I was just curious about that. So
yeah, and the other thing I'll add too about that is, you have to have an administration that's willing to do that. We ponied up a lot of money this year to travel and do that, but they understood the importance of this program and these kids and getting the opportunity to go play those games. So we've had such great support from the administration to allow us to go schedule those games too.
All right, very good. Well, we know you've got a lot of work to do. We won't take up any more of your time. Good luck this week at Colorado Mines. Thank you very much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Hey, I appreciate you guys and all the things you do for D2 football. Appreciate that as well, and continue with the great work.
Thank you, Jeff.
Good luck, Coach.
You bet.
All right, that was Jeff Girsch, the head coach at Angelo State. The Rams will face the Ore Diggers this week in the Division II playoffs. Well, I made the joke at the beginning of the show about Northwest Missouri and Harding playing their unofficial annual game, and Northwest Missouri comes away with the win in that game. 28-9 was the final score. Northwest wins the fourth straight against Harding. Harding actually outgained the Bearcats, but they fumbled twice, threw an interception, and they also turned it over on downs once. Northwest held Harding to 3.7 yards per carry. In his last game at Harding, Cole Chansey rushed for 117 yards, and Northwest quarterback Braden Wright threw for 231 and 3 touchdowns. So more of the same, but this one, in my opinion, seemed much more in doubt than any game had previously in this series.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And you see the touchdown here at the end of the first half. You've seen it right now with Wright to Davis to make it a Northwest lead going into halftime, because Northwest offensively had done nothing to that point for the first 28 minutes. They finally got a touchdown there to end the half, and then begin the second half to get back-to-back touchdowns there to build a 2-score lead was just huge for the Bearcats. That was the biggest adjustment that I kind of seen from Northwest in this one. To end that first half, Braden Wright, he was 6 of 9 passing for 81 yards and a touchdown. The first and last pass of the drive were to Caden Davis. The 4 middle receptions were to Alec Tatum. Their little slot receiver did a great job getting open on that drive. And he had 2 key third down catches. There was a 3rd and 10 near midfield. He had a 23-yard reception. And a 3rd and 5, he had a 15-yard reception to get him in the red zone to set up that touchdown to Caden Davis. So those were kind of the huge plays there. Northwest in those 2 drives to end the half and to start the second half went for 80 and 75 yards. So about 155 yards of offense. They had 100 total yards outside of those 2 drives the rest of the day. So, it wasn't a very smooth offensive performance for Northwest. They got the 28 points. Their first touchdown came on a short field on one of the Harding turnovers as a one-play, 25-yard drive kind of deal. So the offense was inconsistent. The defense did their job. Forced a few turnovers. Harding missed an extra point. Things kind of swung Northwest way in certain points of the game. So, but as I said, going from Harding up 9-7 to Northwest up 21-9 without Harding touching the ball was huge in this game to kind of flip things and kind of forcing Harding to kind of press a little bit, and they couldn't just use their normal ball control offense and kind of ground out the clock with a lead. They had to score, and it really put a lot of pressure on that offense and that triple option.
Hey, Devin, let me ask you, in watching the game, I'm sitting there looking at it going, boy, kind of late in the first half, it looked like, I wouldn't say Harding was controlling the action, but they clearly had the upper hand in it. And it seemed like Northwestern was having a hard time kind of getting going. And, then they get to halftime, that huge, I thought the momentum really swung with the score that they had right before half. And then if you're Harding, you're sitting there going, well, we felt like we were the better football team for a large part of that half, and we're losing at halftime.
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
Yeah, it just seemed like one of those things where this was kind of the hardest. It felt like this was Harding's chance to get the Bearcats. And
yeah, for sure. For sure. The first 3 games in the series kind of deal was all in Maryville. So this is the first one down there in Arkansas. And I thought in the first half, the Northwest offense, they were trying to rely a lot on Al McKellar, which is usually a good plan, but Harding did a great job of limiting his production early on and forcing Northwest in a lot of 3rd and 8 or longer kind of deal. And Braden Wright wasn't comfortable in the pocket, had a couple of sacks, a couple of errant throws, and they just couldn't find their rhythm offensively. But as you said there, the score at the end of the first half really helped them out. And I think the first play after halftime, they hit a 63-yard bomb to Tatum.
Right.
That really set everything up there. And that kind of sequence of events there really put Harding behind the 8 ball with it. And as you said there in the first half, Harding was doing a great job of getting to the edge of the Northwest defense with that triple option. The dive was working decent with Chansey. The linebackers were having a hard time getting to the pitch man on the outside, and Harding was getting some first downs that way. I think after halftime, Northwest did a couple of adjustments alignment-wise to kind of limit that as much as they can and force them to go the length of the field with a 3 or 4 yard dive at a time kind of deal, and it really kind of hampered Harding's offense.
I would agree, and I did notice that Harding got loose outside a few more times in this game than what you've seen Northwest allow. But Northwest still did a great job of putting Harding in a lot of 2nd and 9s and stuff like that. And for Harding, that puts a lot of pressure on them, the way that they go about their offense. Because, they're looking at getting 3 and 4 a pop. Well, when you get 2nd and 9, all of a sudden you're kind of throwing them a little off schedule. And then, if they don't get a nice little chunk on this next play, then are we thinking about passing and stuff like that? And, they ended up throwing, 8 passes in the game or something like that, which is normally a pretty good indication that things aren't going perfect for them, because the lower the number, the better their offense is typically out.
Yeah, for sure. And one thing I will mention is Harding did get in the red zone a couple of times, and one time they had a field goal blocked. Another time they got into about midfield and had a 3rd and 3, and they lost a yard, so it was 4th and 4. I think if they gain a yard or two and it's a 4th and short, they might have gone for it. But they didn't have much confidence that 4th and 4 range is kind of a weird range for that triple option offense. So, but Harding, they were able to move the ball more than I kind of expected against the Bearcat defense. They just couldn't quite get to, when they got to the red zone, punch it in and kind of expose stuff. And we talk about a lot of the really talented players there for Northwest in the front seven, whether it's Samuel Roberts, Zach Howard, Jackson Barnes and company. But I thought their safety, Drew Dostal, number 10, did a fantastic job coming up in the run support on the edges there, and did a great job of doing that. He was a sure tackler. Just want to give him a shout out because he's kind of a guy who came in midway through the year as a kind of into the starting lineup, and he's really solidified that back end. He played really well there on Saturday, so I wanted to give one of the key role players for the Bearcats a shout out.
All right. Well, the Bearcats will move on, and they will face Ferris State, I guess, for the 3rd season in a row that those two will play for the regional championship. Okay. Let's move to Super Region 2 now. Justin was in the house at Valdosta State's 66-35 win over West Georgia. So many highlights, we couldn't even fit them on our hard drive. So
all the offense, I love it.
It was crazy. Ivory Durham had 354 yards passing and 3 touchdowns. Seth McGill had 187 rushing with 2 touchdowns. And Harrison Frost was 29 of 44 for 381, 4 touchdowns for West Georgia. And I was curious, West Georgia was 410 and Valdosta State was 719, 1129 total offense. Much different. You know, the first game, Justin, that they met was a high-scoring game, but this is on another level. And once Valdosta got up 14, it seemed like the game was never in doubt to me. But give me your impressions, what you thought.
Yeah, so pretty much Valdosta got out quick. They got up 14-0 early.
Right.
And it was hard. West Georgia, their defense played well. West Georgia had a hard time really getting anything going offensively. I don't think they had a first down until their 3rd possession. So they faked a punt on their own. I think it was about the 35-yard line, and they didn't get the yard on the fake punt. But and that kind of put them behind 14-0, and they were just in the chase at that point going forward. And Valdosta pretty much kept a 2-score lead going into the half. They had the ball 2:35. They scored a touchdown. And then West Georgia, I thought Valdosta was able to hold them on this at the end of the first half. That would they get the ball coming out of the second half. You know, they can go a 2-for-1, so to speak there. Right. But West Georgia scored, and they go into the half. They went into the half 35-21, so still in the ball game, a couple touchdown difference, and then they could never close that gap. They got a little bit of momentum in the 3rd quarter, got a couple touchdowns, and then the 4th quarter, Valdosta State was able to pull away, getting 66 points. And really some things that really stood out to me in the game was, you know, obviously the 719 yards of total offense, which was, I mean, is uncommon to see between two teams of that caliber. But Valdosta State was 10 for 10 in the red zone. They were 1 for 1 on 4th down and 7 of 12 on 3rd down. So they converted when it was necessary. And then really, when you look at the yardage, they were 354 in the air and they were 365 on the ground. So the air raid, it worked to perfection essentially, because West Georgia had to take away the pass. They had to sit back in coverage. They were not able to load the box. And then between Seth McGill and Ivory Durham ran for 91 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. So they were able to do it not just in the air, but on the ground as well. And so it was a pretty dominant win, I felt like, for Valdosta State. And I think they made a little bit of a statement, especially after they only played 4 weeks ago. And so they were able to make a statement. And for West Georgia, you know, don't take anything away from them. I mean, I think they played a great game. I don't think anybody really anticipated them being there in the preseason. I'm not too sure so many people had them going to the second round of the playoffs. And Harrison Frost over for 381, 4 touchdowns, and another great performance by that young man. But really a high scoring. It was a fun game to watch. It was a fun game to be at. Even though it was Thanksgiving weekend. I want to give props to Valdosta State. There was I think that their attendance was about 2,700 people, but it felt like it was a lot more. And it was just a great atmosphere, and it was a great game to watch.
Very good. Now, you talked about Valdosta being forced to run. From your time in college coaching, and you know something about them. This year feels very different to me with what they're doing offensively, and maybe it's just because of the difference between having Ivory Durham at quarterback or a straight drop back passer. But what they're doing, in my opinion, makes them more consistent on offense, because one bad day by a quarterback's not going to kill you.
Yeah, you're 100% right, Brandon. So, what Ivory Durham brings to the table that they haven't had in the past is the element to tuck the ball and run. If you let him out in space, he'll make you pay. He's probably one of the fastest, if not the fastest guys on the field. And so if he can get in space and he can catch a crease, he's gonna spit it and it's gonna go. And Seth McGill is the same way. I mean, there's really a two-headed monster there with the run game. And Jamar Tompkins added 69 yards. So there's really three potential runs that they have that they can exploit. And then, Gallimore and Sounds, great receivers for the Blazers. And so it's really a compliment, if you will. And they necessarily haven't had that in years past. But, they can throw the football. Ivory Durham doesn't have to force the ball into tight windows. He doesn't have to throw the ball downfield. It'll open up some running lanes for the offense. And I felt like on Saturday it was a compliment of that. They didn't have to throw the football. They were able to run their offense, and the runs really kind of were almost just as explosive as the passes.
All right. Well, let's talk about Valdosta's next opponent. That would be the Bowie State Bulldogs.
We have 13.
We do.
I'm just messing with Chris.
The Bulldogs win 13-10 over Newberry. A great defensive game, and there was no scoring in the first half of the game. And in the second half, eventually Newberry took the lead. Bowie tied. What I thought might have been the deal breaker, Chris, for Bowie was a long 48-yard field goal by Ray Cotton. This is happening, and Jerome Johnson, as you saw in the highlights, was hurt, and everybody's wondering if he's going to come back. The first touchdown was set up when the backup quarterback came in, got strip sacked. That's how Newberry got their score. And then when they hit that long field goal, I just felt like maybe it's just not Bowie's day. But Johnson led them down to the score. They win 13-10, and again, the Bowie State defense, does a great job shutting somebody else down, and the Bulldogs come away with the victory.
Yeah, I mean, we just talked about a game that was really exciting to watch, and now we're talking about a game that was like very hard to watch in the first half. I mean, it was. If you like defense, this is great, but if you like offense, I think a lot of people were just kind of let down because really you had two teams that were very identical to each other, and so because of that, I think they all knew kind of what they wanted to do, and the defense just responded accordingly. Yeah, I think, when you talk about Jerome Johnson and, he's kind of been banged up over the last couple of games, but he's made it very clear that, unless you're going to take an ambulance out to roll him off the field, he's going to stay on the field. He's going to play. And most people know him as a running for his running style, right? But we've seen games where he has passed the ball for some pretty good plays and pretty good yardage. And when Newberry got up like that, you kind of felt like, well, they're going to have to take to the air because he can't run. I mean, the mobility is not there, and they managed to make two really good plays to get into the red zone and then ultimately score those two touchdowns. So, we just kind of crossed our fingers and held our breath for a while because we just didn't know how it was going to happen. We didn't know when it was going to happen. We knew how it had to happen, and it happened. So, now they've got this juggernaut to deal with, and there's been a lot of chatter about, kind of what happened in 2018. Unfortunately, it seems like every time a CIAA team runs into Valdosta, it doesn't end very well. So it's going to be very interesting to see now with probably one of the best defenses that the CIAA has ever had to throw at Valdosta, how they will respond to that. Just because, every team that they've played, they had a really good running back. They had Dwayne McGee in the first round.
Right.
They had, Dre Harris and Mario Anderson in the second round. We've seen them against Bowie State. They have like 3 or 4 really strong running backs. And now you've got another, but a really solid, exceptional, I should say, quarterback in Ivory Durham, and then Valdosta has a really good pair of running backs as well. So, in the end, part of Bowie State's identity is creating turnovers, and Valdosta doesn't give up a lot of turnovers. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of breaks there, because something would have to, especially if Bowie would pull off the win in the next round.
And Chris, 1 second before we move on here, Brandon, you're talking about the CIAA, but they're also the SAC champs, aren't they now? I know you put that on Twitter the other day because they beat first 2 rounds of the playoffs, beat a couple of SAC teams in there as well. So,
I'll kind of joke around with that, but honestly, this year has probably been the best year that I could think of that the CIAA has had a good showing against the SAC. And unfortunately, Chuck's not here with us, but with Trevor winning a couple of games against the SAC, and now Bowie State, winning against their top teams, it's been a pretty good year against the South Atlantic this year.
Well, a question for both Justin and Chris. We've talked about Bowie State's defense. We also talked about Albany State's defense. Will this be the best D that Valdosta's seen since Albany State, or am I missing somebody?
Yeah, I would say it's probably, if not the best, one of the best in the top 2 defenses that they would have seen this year. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. This is Bowie State has this, we always say bend but don't break mentality, and I think they got really put into a bad situation against when Larry Williams, the backup quarterback, got strip sacked, and it's hard to defend against that. But they're a team that has this mentality that, they kind of just throw themselves at you. And I think even Newberry you can kind of see them kind of wearing down a little bit. And they're a very physical team. So I think that this is going to be one of the better, certainly top 2 or 3 defenses that Valdosta has seen this year.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and we'll talk about all those games later. Let's move on to a game that wasn't so close. Matt, Northern Sun out of the playoffs, a 55-6 win over Colorado Mines, a 55-6 win over Bemidji State. We'll talk about all whatever superlatives there were, but essentially this was just all Colorado Mines.
Yeah, I was told we weren't going to talk about this game today, but on a serious note, you take a look at Mines. They did a nice job of being very patient offensively. They found themselves up 2 scores at half. It looked like a real good football game. Then all of a sudden the third quarter happens where Colorado Mines is getting after the quarterback, as you can see right here, for Bemidji. And then furthermore, then they start opening up their offense a little bit, not just running the ball, but also showing that they can throw it pretty well as well. And, they end up getting some splash scores here, some pretty long ones. And, this is kind of what I had feared a little bit with Bemidji coming in with the 28th best defense out of the 28 teams in the field starting the playoffs. Was when you give up, 30 points a game. They had 2 games where they had this kind of thing happen with both Augustana doing it to them earlier in the year. And then also when you take a look at their game with Mankato, that got away from them. And that game had, this had some of those same type of things going on. And, credit to Mines because they really pressured the quarterback quite a bit. And then from there, they were able to go ahead and get scores and really produce. So I was pretty impressed with what I saw from Mines, and they don't beat themselves. They're able to do a lot of good things offensively. So, and by the way, that was the highlights from them playing Shadron, in case anyone was wondering there. But nonetheless, Mines was able to go ahead, and they are tough with their attack. What they have with quarterback John Matoka, and then they've also got Michael Zeman at running back, who is a kind of a little bowling ball back there, and really good balance, hard runner. And by the second half, Bemidji wasn't too thrilled to have to go tackle him. And at the same time, they had to kind of corral the passing game because Mines was kind of putting it on them, to be real frank.
Well, nonetheless, I picked Augustana to win the region. So this game is irrelevant to me because, it is all about me. And I was already done after that. So, but
you would pick Bemidji State in that game. I mean, geez.
You know what, though, Brandon, this is when I talked about who I thought was the best team in the conference. I've said all year in the Northern Sun that I thought it was Augustana. And Augustana, with the balance that they have, I think would have probably given Mines a pretty good football game because the fact that they would have been a little bit better defensively, not quite let things get the way they kind of became. But, you got to win your first game to go ahead and get a chance to go to Golden. Right. And obviously Augustana didn't make that happen, and they have only themselves to blame.
All right. We've got two more games to look at. Quickly, Kutztown was able to come away with a 10-7 victory over New Haven, and it was much the same as the Bowie-Newberry game, a very defensive-oriented game where people did not no team scored until towards the end of the game. Kutztown, the number one seed, a team that sometimes it's hard to get stuff on them, like videos and stuff like that. It's hard to, the PSAC network is available, but highlight packages and that sort of thing. We haven't probably given them the credit they deserved, and I know that I certainly have have not given them, the love that they deserve because, I probably picked against them 4 times this year, and here they are in their regional final, and get the rematch with the Shepherd Rams. And obviously, as you guys know, I picked Shepherd to win a region, so I'm probably going to pick against Kutztown again today, which will probably make them happy because it's been good for them so far.
I think one big thing about Kutztown is when we take a look at some of the teams that get a lot of press or maybe get a lot of our attention in Super Region 1, whether it's the Slippery Rocks or it's the Shepherds, a lot of these teams are more higher scoring teams.
Sure.
And they win are kind of defined that way. Kutztown's a completely different team in that regard. They are not afraid to have that low scoring game. I wasn't shocked that this was a low scoring game because it seemed like they're probably one of, if not the best defensive team in that super region, and they happen to find themselves in with a chance to get the Final Four with a win.
Right, and New Haven plays good defense too, so it was predictable that it would be that way. Probably a little lower scoring than I thought it might be. If she just said 24-17, it was a low scoring game. So.
Yeah, I picked 2 1 seeds to lose last week. I picked Mines to lose. That one was not close. But I also picked New Haven to upset Kutztown. It didn't quite happen, but it was close. So I'm like, okay, I was at least a lot closer on that one. I saw the score of the Mines game. I'm like, uh-oh, that's not going to age well. But at least this game was a really good game, and both teams kind of came out there and played well defensively. Just points were at a premium, to be sure, with that one. So close. I'm picking the upset. So close.
Well, here in a little bit, we'll have an opportunity to ridicule each other over our own bad picks. But right now, the last game that we need to focus on, Ferris State had its way really with Grand Valley. If you look at the game, it was a 7-7 game. Both teams scored, and then Grand Valley was able to get a stop, and Ferris punted. And Grand Valley got a big run by Tariq Reed. Then the next snap goes over Cade Peterson's head. And you knew in this the kind of conditions that you're seeing that it was not going to go well. You needed to stay ahead of the chains all the time. And they punted short field to Ferris. Ferris scores again. Later on, Ferris gets the ball, and I thought there's a jump pass to a tight end that should be coming up from Jared Bernhardt, and I thought that was the game right there. I just thought in these conditions, it's not going to happen, and that's exactly. I'm sorry. What?
It was kind of Tebow-ish, right?
Yeah,
here.
right here. And it was a great read and great design. I've watched the play like 10 times to look at the design to get the misdirection, to get the safety linebacker to hesitate, and it was a great play. But nonetheless, the Bulldogs end up winning big in this one. The final score was 54-20, and they will go on and face Northwest Missouri. I think the biggest thing to come out of this game, guys, is we don't know the health of Jared Bernhardt. He left the game at some point, was tended to on the field. I've been told it's a rib. I've been told it's a concussion. I've been told it's a shoulder injury. Not sure what it is. It looks very concussion-y to me, the way he came off, and the fact that he was not on the sideline for the second half, which is sometimes what you'll do in concussion protocol. Having said that, I guess you could do the same thing for broken ribs. But I think that'll be one of the big stories of the next round is, will Jared Bernhardt play? Your thoughts, gentlemen?
Yeah, and Brandon, and having a chance to watch them, first off, obviously they use Jared Bernhardt so much in the running game. He's, when you take a look at it, their top two running backs, Marvin Campbell and then Minor, were both hurt. So they're not there to help out on a snowy day where, the coach is going to want to make sure that he's giving the keys to the guy that he has the most trust with, and that's going to be Bernhardt. And, I mean, he was at, 15 carries or so when he got hurt in early, third quarter. An underrated thing with him is he has got a great initial burst once he receives the football. And there's so much eye candy when you're watching them. And Coach Justin, I'm assuming you had a chance to see some of that in the highlights. They are running jet motion stuff, fake jet, real jet. So there's so much eye candy and things going on that it's really hard to keep track of what they're doing. And then they go ahead, and right when you think you're starting to figure out what they're doing in the running game, they pop a pass on you right up the seam, and the backer's already coming downhill, and you're in a bad spot. And that happened with Grand Valley a few times in this game where, I don't know if you saw that in the highlights, Coach, but they were having to come up trying to take care of number one, which is stop the quarterback from running.
Yeah, you saw on the highlights that y'all just showed, the misdirections, the motions, the shifts, all that stuff is eye candy, but it does wreak havoc on the linebackers and on the safeties, trying to set the defense. So, which basically you're telling your defense, you've got to take away the run and make them beat you in the pass. And it seems like they were able to do that, especially in those conditions, because it's going to be tough to get your footing to throw the football and catch it, and it's cold on the receiver's hands. So taking away the run is first and foremost, and then take the pass away second. But it seems like the motions they used them successfully, and then got the linebackers and safeties kind of off balance, and they had a fit on the run, especially on the Tebow pass, if you'll call it that. Right. But it got them off balance. They had to try to take away the run, and then it just slipped in right behind them on the dump pass, and it's just kind of that's what you're designing to do. That's what you're trying to do with all those motions. So it makes it very difficult from a defensive perspective.
Yeah, and then
for sure.
You're watching the other side of this, and Grand Valley's having trouble with some of the most rudimentary things like getting a good snap. Like they were having a bunch of high snaps where the quarterbacks, they're trying to run zone read concept. That throws everything all off in terms of timing when the quarterback's having to leave their feet to go get the ball. Then he's got to bring it back down. The running back's got to slow. And as Brandon mentioned earlier, they had a bad snap early in the contest. and immediately put them in a bad spot. And it just seemed like things looked a lot easier for Ferris than they looked for Grand Valley offensively. Grand Valley was not able to get in any type of rhythm. They weren't able to establish the run. Ferris was able to take that away from them. So I was really impressed with what I saw from Ferris yesterday, especially in a rivalry game where they're playing someone for the second time. You would think that's really advantage Grand Valley in that case. And you didn't see that at all. I mean, it looked like they were playing him for the first time and just kind of having their way with them.
Yeah, and I want to piggyback off that real quick. For Grand Valley, they had their backup center in, true freshman playing center there in a playoff game, so it's kind of a tough situation for him to be in. Also for Ferris, backup quarterback, I think it's Malik Mitchell, came in and he played pretty well in relief duty. I mean, he was 4 of 8 passing, 66 yards and a touchdown, chipped in 8 carries for 53 yards, another score there as well. So he came in and played really well. So Bernhardt's a great player. They didn't lose as much as you would think going to a backup quarterback. And part of that's because Coach Anise does a great job with the quarterbacks over there in the scheme. They're fantastic up there. And they also have a massive offensive line that's super physical. That's one thing that kind of jumped off the screen to me was how much they controlled the line of scrimmage in that game. And that line, I think they fed off the bad weather and knowing where they were going. The defense didn't know where they were going to go with it. And they were able to kind of impose their will on the D-line for Grand Valley and kind of all started up there. So I was impressed with Ferris State up front with how physical they were.
Well, and Devin, I didn't. I think you had just said it. I didn't get a chance to watch too much of that game, being at a game. But when there's a backup center in there, and what you kind of hit on it, when the snaps are high or the snaps are off, especially in a zone read concepts, the RPO concepts, that can, if the snap is not pretty much here to the quarterback's hands, it will throw the whole timing of the concepts off, not necessarily on the runs, but on what the quarterback's going to read. And, is he going to throw the football? Is he going to give the football? It pretty much makes it a give at that point. And so, but I would say that also having, coached in those conditions before, the weather for, a backup, not a starter, I'll say that for not a starter to be in, it is very, very difficult. It can be very difficult. It's hard enough to step in on a clear day, but when you have that kind of weather, and then it becomes a mentality, it just, are you going to win in those weather conditions? And unfortunately, a lot of times if you start having centers, a lot like kickers, if they start having bad snaps or, bad kicks, bad throws,
Mind game,
it starts to spiral. So, not making excuses by any stretch of the imagination. And again, I didn't get a chance to see it, but those are all things that, it happens, and it happens real quick, especially in weather conditions like that.
All right. Well, guys, that is a wrap-up of what happened last week. We got some great games to look forward to this week in the regional finals. Before we get to our pick'ems, let's look at the Harlan Hill Award. 36 players were nominated this year. The list was released the middle of this week. There are so many to look at that I've organized them by position. And so the first one I'm going to throw up is quarterbacks. And if you're looking at it, I have organized them by total offense. So if you see the category with the numbers, number 1 through not rated or not ranked, that is by total offense. And then as best I could, the touchdowns. Obviously, we've talked about Tyson Bagent a ton. We probably expect him to win the game, win the award. There are other players with good numbers. Austin Reed at number 10. With him, it would be a situation where I think he's probably played the toughest schedule of these, and with 40 touchdowns. And then one thing I think it's important to look at, Jared Bernhardt was not ranked, I think, because he didn't play in 75% of the games, which is what you have to be ranked in the NCAA statistics. But if he were ranked, he would have been number 17, 294.3 yards per game. So, men, what are your thoughts on the quarterbacks?
I think the one thing that stands out to me, just looking at that list, and it's you can make a case for just about everybody on that list, in my opinion.
Agreed.
But the one guy, and I'm looking at it like, in the Super Region 2, the one guy that stood out to me and I think he deserves a lot of credit, is Harrison Frost from West Georgia. I know his yards per game was a little bit, down, and he doesn't have the big gaudy numbers, but he threw for 3,700 yards, I believe, including this weekend. It was 36-18 going into it, but I don't think anybody necessarily anticipated them to be as good offensively as they were, and I think he did a great job. And I think like the difference to me with him, when you look at him and you compare him with Austin Reed or Ivory Durham, is Reed and Durham have big time targets on the outside that they're going to throw to, and you know who they are. With Harrison Frost, again, I don't think he has that, those guys on the outside. And don't get me wrong, they're a very, very good football team, but I think what he did was kind of underrated for most of the season.
Did more with less kind of deal around him.
Yeah.
Devin, what were your thoughts on seeing this list, Devin?
Well, I think TJ Davis is a really fantastic player. I don't know if he is going to do enough to take this award from the Shepherd quarterback or Austin Reed. I think those two are kind of the top two guys just because their offenses are so explosive with him. I think Davis is going to be in the mix for it. I'm just not sure if he's going to have enough numbers to kind of get there. And kind of Bernhardt's also a great player there that just couldn't quite get enough games in. It's going to hurt him, I think, with it. But, I mean, we have a lot of great quarterbacks here across the nation in D2. Ivory Durham, talked about him earlier in the show and how explosive he is with his legs as well. That helped out that offense, and they're a really good team. So I haven't watched some of these quarterbacks play, like the Southwest Baptist quarterback. I know Bemidji State's quarterback, they didn't have a great defense, so he had to put up big numbers for them to win games kind of deal. So what are your kind of thoughts on some of the other quarterbacks we didn't mention?
I think it's interesting to see three sophomores on the list. Austin Reed, not surprising, but three sophomores. And that could be a situation where they're trying to get the kid on the map too. But in my opinion, if you're looking at this list of quarterbacks, though, and if we're just picking the best quarterback, it definitely has to be between Bagent and Reed.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. I think Reed, if I'm not mistaken, Brandon, I think that they're going to have the next, the SIDs, of course, vote on this. And my understanding is they have a vote again tomorrow. So with that, I believe our 36 becomes 8, if I'm not mistaken. And none of us are SIDs, so we obviously don't have the chapter and verse with that. But I think it's real hard not to. I mean, Bagent's the overwhelming favorite, I think, in our eyes, but we pay pretty close attention to this. I think the average SID who's kind of tuning in and looking at these numbers, Bagent, once again, still is the number one. Guys like Brandon Alt, I think Brandon Alt kind of had his shot, and unfortunately, their only score was a kick return touchdown at Mines, and he had a chance to kind of make his numbers all. He could have gone ahead of Bagent in terms of touchdowns or what have you, but it just didn't happen. And Austin Reed, taking a look at him, the fact that they lost, I think, takes a little shine away from him, because the fact that they if they keep winning, I think he is the most formidable guy to Tyson Bagent in this conversation. Certainly Jared Bernhardt is part of this, but we talked about it a little bit earlier, and he took some head jerking type of shots as he came through the hole playing against Grand Valley this last week. There's a chance that he may not just be out this week, but could be out for a few weeks for all we know. And you have to really go dig for his stats to find out more about him. And I think that hurts one of the guys in this case when you have to. So when an SID would have to go research him to kind of get information, I don't think that a lot of them are going to do that. So I think that's advantage Bagent.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing, it's seeing it on numbers on a paper is one thing. I think Bernhardt with the eye test stands out more than his numbers kind of will show on here, which will kind of hurt him from with a grand view with people who don't watch it week in, week out as much as say we would kind of deal.
No doubt.
Well, and I guess my question is just kind of like, okay, we can look at all that, but what's the criteria that the SIDs are voting on, right? Like, what is that criteria?
My take, Justin, is they look at it by most outstanding player per stats, because keep in mind what percentage of the SIDs are seeing anywhere near as much football as we are. And I'm not tooting our horn, but I'm just saying, it's just not realistic. I mean, should they? Of course. But I think I was talking with our partner Chuck, and I think in the last time they had a vote, it was like, the 160 or 170 member schools, roughly 90 of the SIDs voted, which is basically just over half. So I don't think that a lot of them are digging into tape or looking at things. They're going on the NCAA stat page. They're pulling up passing leaders, and guess who they see?
Let me. I'm not afraid to throw shade at SIDs, but in their defense,
no, it's not.
Throwing shade, yes.
Half of their football seasons were over 4 weeks ago. They're deep. They started with basketball. They have volleyball. It's just a case of they have a more rounded sporting attention than we do. And so I think but. Having said that, you're correct in that they're going to take a cursory look at it. They're not going to take a deep dive. All right, so let's bring up the running backs, guys. Toriano Clinton leads the country, just a little yard ahead of Cody Schrader. Dwayne McGee, a freshman with a great freshman year. Wow. A former Indianapolis Greyhound, Al McKellar there. And you look at Thurl Reisdorfer, a junior, and Ali Muhammad at Minot, a sophomore. I have some thoughts on this, but I don't want to influence your guys' opinion. So give me your opinions first.
I guess I'll jump in here first. I think the problem with the running backs is that you got some really stellar quarterbacks. And we're used to seeing numbers really jump off the page in this category. If you think about some of the guys who've ran for 2,000 yards in a season, and I don't think we really see that in this particular set of running backs. So, I think that this might be a down year for running backs in Division II. And I mean, you got the top two guys, Toriano Clinton, Cody Schrader, that probably going to be the top two in consideration overall. But out of this, this is a good set of running backs. This is not a great set when we look at what we've seen in history over the last, I would say, probably 3 or 4 seasons.
That's a very good point, Chris, is that we're not throwing shade at this current class, but you and I, we've talked about this kind of thing, as has Brandon and others. We're used to seeing running backs that are right around that 2,000-yard mark, and maybe even a few of them, and maybe with more touchdowns and everything else. And this kind of wasn't that season, and it really wasn't pretty much the whole year. If you took a look, there wasn't anyone who was trending, off the charts. It seems like we've continued to become a little bit more of a passing world, and maybe not seeing quite so many gaudy running stats. And I think maybe that's what we've seen a little bit of this year.
Just the future of football.
Yeah, and a lot of teams, I think, are going to running back by committee, as well as Daniel Pelfrey said in our comments that you have 2 or 3 really solid running backs in your roster, and you want to keep them all fresh and healthy through the whole season. So instead of running one to the ground for 3 or 4 years, like Northwest Missouri back in the day with Xavier Oman or Danny Woodhead at Chattern, you don't have those usual bell horse running backs who have these gaudy numbers anymore, because you would have them get a little breather and stay healthier through a whole season instead of just running them through a brick wall every week. So, I mean, it's probably a better brand of football. They're just less running backs putting up huge numbers.
Yeah, but I think the other thing with that is that it depends on the team and the depth that they have at that position. And I'll give you a good example, which is an individual who's not on this list and probably not a lot of people know about, but the running back at Franklin Pierce, who I don't think they won a game this season. But their running back, I mean, the guy was getting like 160 yards a game at times, and would just put up some pretty big numbers. But he's not going to get a lot of love in this list just because you're looking at what the team has done and there's no depth there at that school. So
Mhm.
I mean, you still have some schools that are doing that kind of old school. We're dependent on one person to run the ball, but these are all schools that are well above average in Division II in the way that they play in their overall records and outcome, and they're not going to be like that.
Chris, let me ask you, in taking a look at Bowie here, I was a little bit surprised to see that you didn't have a defender from Bowie selected, maybe even the quarterback. That's because maybe that's how I identify the Bulldogs. Tell me what was your thought when you saw the list? Were you expecting someone else from Bowie? Were you expecting anyone from Bowie? What were your thoughts?
Well, I wasn't expecting anybody on offense. Bryce Witt was the conference player of the year, and he was on the quarterback list.
Sure.
And Khalil Wilkins and Sidney Gibbs at Shaw were kind of 1-2 in the running back area. But again, when you look at that, what they've been able to do relative to the rest of Division II is not like eye popping off the charts. I was expecting to see maybe somebody like Keyshawn James from Fayetteville State, or somebody, Jonathan Ross or Joshua Pryor from Bowie, to be on this list from Bowie State. So I was kind of surprised that somebody maybe just didn't take a shot to throw one of those guys on here, at least for consideration.
Sure. Okay.
And I think maybe it's because it goes back to, do they really even have a shot to win the award as a defensive player?
Right.
And I think that's probably part of the argument here, is that Khalil Wilkins has a better shot, even though his numbers don't stand out as much, because he's an offensive player.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, and then I take a look at some of the guys on this list, Michael Zeman, for example, or Cole Chansey, guys who are averaging anywhere between 4 and 5 yards a carry, which normally isn't the kind of numbers you're going to see from someone who is going to be a finalist, in that group of 8. That's not to say that they couldn't make it, because both have been extremely productive guys, but have been extremely high volume guys as well. And a lot of times in the past, when we're looking at the guys who are truly the top in the running back position, in terms of numbers, we're looking more like 6 or 7 yards a carry. Brandon, I know that you had kind of looked at that in the past. Isn't that kind of what you would have had more in mind?
I always think that 6 is the baseline. Aside from somebody who really has to carry all the offense because it's really easy to key on them then.
Mm-hmm.
But if there's any kind of offensive balance, I think 6. I've always looked at a quarterback rating of 160 and a running back 6 yards per carry. When I think about the true great players, and it's not that I had some great insight in coming up with those numbers. It's that great players had those numbers over the years, and just so that's where I've gone with that. So
sure,
yeah, that's one of those deals there as well with running backs. Also, it kind of that number 6 or 7 yards to carry will pop off a screen to an SID looking at the running backs, kind of deal with that. And one thing you got to remember, all these SIDs, they'll see names they remember. So Chansey from Harding's a 4-year starter for him and had a lot of yards. Al McKellar, 2 years at UIndy, now playing for Northwest, top 5 team in the nation. Guys like that will get the benefit of the doubt sometimes, even if their numbers aren't explosive. Maybe keep moving on. It's like, oh yeah, we know Al McKellar. He's a 2-time finalist. We remember him, and the name sticks around a little bit for you as well. So you see that as well sometimes. That might help maybe a running back or two get farther than their numbers would maybe say, because there's some familiarity with the names around the nation.
Yeah, I think Austin Reed at quarterback is a clear example of that, given the show that he put on in the playoffs last year. If you're someone at this level, you remember who he was and what he did.
Yes.
All right. Because I am a caring, soft-hearted person, I care about my friends, I would torture Matt Witwicky and go ahead and just skip the wide receivers. But since the Northern Sun was eliminated from the playoffs, let's bring the wide receivers up.
Boy, you had to throw that out there too, huh?
Yes.
You're done.
Obviously, some really good players. Henry Litwin, injured most of the year. We did not know that. But, you look at this, and this is Danny Kidner all the way, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Well, and you really, when you take a look at this, Brandon, you don't see the fact that he caught over 120 balls on the page here. And
Right.
SIDs are going to see that. And the fact that he scored, 18 times or whatever it was, and the yardage is so far ahead of the next guy when you look at the total numbers also. I mean, so no matter which way an SID slices it, I mean, obviously I know that I've had the pom-poms ready for Kittner for weeks now and have been talking him up. And I think I initially talked him up almost like a dark horse candidate, like maybe this isn't something that we're seeing, as a realistic shot. But guys, I really think that Kittner has a chance to make this final 8. What do you guys think?
I agree with that, and that's kind of where my thought was, is that I don't like the focus on just who's in the playoffs, right? Because that takes away from somebody that has put up such good numbers as Danny Kittner. And so to me, should he be in the final 8? Absolutely, 100%. I mean, because his numbers are definitely way staying off the page better than most of the running backs do, in my opinion.
Right.
All right. Well, I know we'd spent a lot of time on quarterbacks, but goodness gracious, this one was easy to look at.
Yes.
Let's move on to defense, guys. These are all the different players. My favorite is a player who I think should come out as one of the 2 finalists from SR1, and that is Guam Lee from Notre Dame College. But there are lots of players, a lot of good defensive players this year, including ones from Bowie that aren't on the list that we talked about earlier. And probably I would, I would put a Bowie player maybe as the top defensive player if he were nominated, because some of the players, are 25 tackles for loss. It's insane. But you guys obviously, know specifically things a little bit better, specifically in your area. Are there any players that stand out for you guys?
For me, Drew Sears does at Lindenwood. He's we just spoke a moment ago about players that SIDs or others in the D2 world would have seen previous to this year or would remember. And if you're paying much attention to it, Drew Sears has been a tackling machine at Lindenwood over the years. And what's funny is in the post-game presser, Grand Valley was talking about their game with Lindenwood. And I believe it was the halfback for Grand Valley said, that number 5 is a dude. And he was talking about Drew Sears. And, Drew Sears is just one of those guys who, I talked about it earlier when I was speaking, of Hunter Kyle at Angelo. Drew Sears is the same kind of guy, sideline to sideline, just hitting, and he's a constant threat for them. And so I think that he's a name that I wouldn't be shocked to see him advance, given the name recognition he has in these circles. Let me ask you guys, does anyone else kind of catch your eye, guys, with the remainder of the group?
Not personally,
Is that
no.
a no? Is that
Okay.
a no? Okay. Yeah, I mean, and that's fair. Again, I think that goes back to the point about, we've been harping on some of the Bowie guys not being on the list, that, we were more impressed with them than what's on the list. Nonetheless, it is what it is. And, there's a likelier chance that I'll run a marathon tomorrow than there is that a defensive player will win the Harlan Hill.
You know what though, Brandon? It's like this. All those guys on this list could end up being on our All-American team.
100%.
But at the end of the day, we're talking about the Harlan Hill, and that's for the single individual player that gets chosen for this award. And It's just the reality of it that you're probably not going to see a defender get that unless they have ridiculously eye-popping numbers.
Which is why we honor an offensive and a defensive player of the year.
Yeah, and I think that's the issue I see here, is that, the defensive players don't get enough love at the national level.
100%.
We certainly do it, but there needs to be an award. Now, they do that in the FCS, and they need to do something like that Division II for the defense to be recognized separately.
Anybody who wants to sponsor a big trophy and let us run the award, we'll do that. So just contact us.
Yeah, and there might be.
Ferg, you moved over next to the wall. Are you getting tired? Are you resting over there?
I feel you, brother. I feel that myself. All right, so
And one second, Brandon, before we move on, and there might be a couple other.
Yeah, we got other Harlan Hill stuff to talk about. So go ahead.
Yeah. And there might be other really good defensive players who may have made this list if there wasn't an offensive player on their team that was fantastic. I mean, That's another thing. We talked about this earlier with teams. You only nominate one guy. So if you're going to nominate either Al McKellar from Northwest or Samuel Roberts, who is the MIAA Defensive Player of the Year, you would nominate Al McKellar. He has name recognition, offensive player, over someone like Roberts. You can see those situations a couple places across the nation. We talked about Bowie State already, that it could be one of the situations you only nominate one guy. You nominate the guy with the best chance to get to the finalist thing.
Okay, fair enough. And I know we don't have the list and a good way to organize it, but I'm just curious because putting 36 names on the screen is just too much. Who do you guys think is going to come out of each region? So 2 out of each region. We're pretty sure Bagent is going to come out of 1, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody disagree? Okay. What about Super Region 2?
Reed.
That would be my initial thought. Anybody disagree with that?
I think Reed and Ivory Durham is who comes
Agreed.
to mind for me. But Justin, what are your thoughts in terms of if you were betting the house, who you betting on?
I would say those are probably my top 2. I'm not. The other one that I get caught up on is Dwayne McGee, but he's an underclassman. But what he did is pretty remarkable. But
look for him in the future.
Yeah. That's kind of what I'm thinking. Durham and Reed to me are probably your top 2, not just on what they did, but just kind of what they've done for their teams throughout the year.
We found out that good South Atlantic Conference running backs can win that award no matter how bad their coaching is. They're good at.
Wow. Wow.
See, this is again where I get kind of hung up with the, you have an Ivory Durham that, does really well, but has a lot of star power around him to do that. And his numbers don't jump off the page. And you compare that versus somebody like a Bryce Witt that, had took his team to the best record in their Division II years.
Sure. We looked at Witt, Chris, and his touchdowns weren't that great. I think that's one of the reasons maybe he wasn't nominated. Did he end with like 20 touchdowns or something like that?
He had 42 between.
He had 42. Okay.
Rushing and passing.
Was it the yards per game? There was one stat that wasn't as impressive as we thought because at the beginning of the year we'd have thought Witt would battle with Bagent for that just based on stats alone.
Right.
And there was something I don't recall it at this point, but.
Well, the other thing though, when you look at when I look at the other people out of Super Region 2, again, to me, it depends on what you make your case on and are you looking at stats? Are you looking at what they did? Because aside from Reed and Durham and all those guys, and you look at Dwayne McGee, I mean, you could argue he carried Lenore Ryan into the playoffs. You could argue Harrison Frost on a team that was picked 5th in the Gulf South Conference took his team to the second round of the playoffs. I mean, so I think it depends on what we're looking at. But if you look at the numbers, then it has to be Durham and Reed.
Okay.
But you're right, Witt, Frost, McGee, Martin, Wilkie. I mean, you can make a case for all of them. I think it just, and I'm not trying to be argumentative, but I think it just depends on what we're looking at.
I mean, there's a slam dunk here, and then there's this number 2 that it's what direction do you really go in?
Exactly.
Yep. Yeah,
exactly.
You go with best player on best team kind of deal. So that's not thing, but it happens though. It definitely happens with it.
Right.
I mean, yeah. We could debate that all night.
Yes,
well,
exactly.
The other thing to consider with this, guys, is that if we're talking about Reed, for example, maybe he ends up getting a lot of love amongst the golf SIDs.
Well,
okay, so then you have other SIDs in the region who may not know that as well, and they end up going with their guy, and one guy can almost knock out another or hurt another's chances.
Bingo.
Agreed.
So let's look at Super Region 3. Who's coming out of Super Region 3, guys?
It's a tough one.
Yeah, it is. I think I agree with you, Matt, that Drew Sears is going to be one of them.
The challenge he has, though, Brandon, he's got Cody Schrader at Truman, who's got great running back stats. So, when we talk about who's even going to win the conference per se in terms of the voting, I'm not sure he wins he's a more recognized name for the SIDs because
Right.
Drew is because he's been around for a long time. He's been a superstar.
Right, but we just spent probably 5 minutes talking about how the running back stats aren't that great. And I think we have to keep that in mind.
But are the SIDs looking at it with that same?
I got you. Because really, if you were to ask me, I'm probably, even though the yards per carry were down, I think it'll be Cole Chansey and Drew Sears.
I could see that because there's a lot of name recognition attached with those guys. It's hard not to say Jared Bernhardt at Ferris, and I think the fact that he had the thing he did right before this vote, if it's tomorrow, that puts him in a pretty nice spot, healthy or not.
It theoretically would, but like we talked about, they're going to go look at the stats on the NCAA.com, and he's not even going to be anywhere on there.
He's the biggest X factor in this whole thing, any super region, no doubt about it.
And one thing I'll also mention here with this region is Al McKellar played in the GLVC. A lot of those SIDs have seen him play the last couple of years, and now he's also in the MIAA, and they all saw him this year as well. So he'll have, for a player from a conference with a silo scheduling, he'll have a lot more exposure to another conference than you would normally see from a player like that. So he's also good, and also TJ Davis is a stud, just not sure where he's going to line up and all this stuff as well. So
Right, okay, here's the deal. I believe McKellar is by far the best running back in Super Region 3, even over Toriano Clinton.
But his numbers are...
Correct. He just doesn't have the numbers. So
will his name recognition overcome that is kind of the question with him.
All right, guys, we did not pick another guy to come out of Super Region 1. Matt and I were talking earlier in the week, and I thought maybe it'd be Guam Lee. Does anybody else have anybody else that they think maybe would come out of Super Region 1? And maybe my bias for actually picking defensive players is affecting, my perception of this. But who else besides Tyson Bagent out of Super Region 1?
I think Henry Litwin on name recognition and career. Because let's be honest, his stats this year, I don't even remember if he's top 20 in regards to his
27, I believe.
There you go. And the fact that they share the love with other wideouts that are very productive as well obviously doesn't help him. But he's a tremendous wideout and has gotten a lot of headlines over the last few years. So on name recognition itself, he could possibly get in. That's the first person I kind of think of when I look at the list. Otherwise, I mean, Bagent is clearly heads and tails. Right. I mean, he's the guy.
Okay. Super Region 4, guys. We believe Kittner's one of them.
Yep.
And Chris will quit playing fantasy football if he's not. Who would be the second person out of Super Region 4? We got Alt
from Bemidji,
Zeman, Sterling Cole, Reisdorfer, Parnell, and Muhammad.
I think if we go with just doing a quick look at the numbers, Brandon Alt's going to be pretty far along in that conversation.
Going to be salty.
And if there are guys who are a little more savvy on the football side, Michael Zeman from Mines, the running back, is probably going to get all
the. Is that too small? Is that too small for you guys to see?
Yeah, that's too blurry.
Okay.
It is for me, but I'm not a good judge of that.
No, it's okay.
Yeah.
Much better.
Okay, that's the best I can do with that.
This is a reading test. I'm going to fail.
Yes. Okay. I'm just trying to help. But anyway, those would be those are all the nominees for Super Region. And if you look at Alt, I think that Witt is right that he would be the candidate to come out of that. Yeah. The other one besides Kittner.
I mean, to Alt's credit, until this last week, he was kind of the dude who was chasing Bagent in terms of numbers.
Gotcha.
I mean, his quarterback rating wasn't because he completes just over 50% of his throws. He's a high volume guy.
Gotcha.
But at the same time, how deep are they going to look into those numbers? They're just going to see eye-popping touchdowns, eye-popping 330 some yards a game, all that stuff. So,
Well, much to Chris's chagrin, I don't look at stats until this time of year when the Harlan Hill Trophy comes out. So I wasn't aware of that, but I'll trust you with that. So let's. Nothing's really changed our mind that we think Tyson Bagent should be the winner of that. We'll see next week. Did he? A question I asked you guys in our private chat: did he win the trophy with that throw on Saturday, or do you think we're too far into it? Is that too much?
I mean, it's supposed to be regular season only. It's supposed to be, but he should have probably.
Okay.
Yeah, it almost felt like a Doug Flutie moment or something. I just dated myself with that reference.
You date yourself with your hairline, so don't sweat it.
After the show, you'll find out what I'm talking about.
Twice in one show.
All right, guys, let's go ahead.
Because Brandon, we've seen Harlan Hill candidates go up against each other in the playoffs, and one completely outforms the other, and it didn't matter in the end. We've seen that before. I'm sorry, Bearcat fans, for bringing up some old stuff.
Yeah,
wait, is Danny Woodhead not up this year again? Is that not a thing? Is he not up again?
I would love to get a sponsor and have it be the Danny Woodhead Offensive Player of the Year award, just to shove it in the face of all the people who've given Danny a hard time over the years. That's like a running joke on the message board, and that would I can't tell you how happy that would make me. All right, let's look at our futility from last week, guys. It really wasn't that bad, but there were some games that we felt were easy to pick. Looking at that, Chris did the best. One loss, picked Harding. The Bisons did not come through for him. Otherwise, the rest of us both have two losses. So good job, Chris. You dominated us. So good job. Let's look at this week's pick. 4 games. We're gonna pick them all, guys. Chuck gave me his picks. So I will have those. Shepherd is at Kutztown. Bowie State at Valdosta State. Northwest Missouri at Ferris State. Angelo State at Colorado Mines. I don't know how we're going to do the order. Chuck will pick last every time. It's only fair since he will not be able to pick up any information from you guys. But let's go ahead and we're going to go in the order that it appears on my screen. So I'm going to go Devin first. Shepherd, Kutztown.
I said last week the winner of Notre Dame Shepherd would win the Super Region. I'm going to stick with that, so I'm going to go with the Shepherd Rams.
Okay. Matt.
Shepherd reminds me a little bit of the SR1 version of West Florida in regards to superstar quarterback, defense that scares the heck out of me. So they're having to win a firefight each week, including, they've had to put up 38 points each of the first 2 weeks. That said, I'm still going to go ahead and stay with Shepherd to win this game. I think they're also going to have revenge on their minds from their loss to Kutztown earlier in the year.
Okay. Chris.
We've seen this revenge thing play out time and time again where those seeking revenge remain unable to do so. And I think that the defense here of Kutztown is strong enough to push the Rams back again. So I'm going to go against the grain, and I'm going to go with Kutztown winning the region.
Okay. Justin.
I'm going to stay with Shepherd. I think that the quarterback's hot right now. They're feeling pretty good after the win this week, and their defense is pretty dang good. So I'm going to stay with Shepherd.
Okay. I'm going to pick Shepherd as well. And
by the way, after the Chuck pick, I do have the computer ranking stuff again, just for entertainment purposes.
Yes, please, Matt.
We're not actually going to be wagering on the show or promoting that, but yes.
Well,
but
I'll
let you give Chuck's first. I'm sorry, Brandon.
He picked Shepherd. It's all good.
Okay, that was probably not a tough one to figure. Okay, so what do you guys think? Do you think that Massey, the computer rankings, who do you think they have favored in this one?
Cuts down by 2.
I was going to say Kutztown -3.
Shepherd by 6.
Really?
Yes.
Who do we think? Whoever wins this game, who has a harder matchup next round? Kind of be the most difficult team to plan for in the next round. Kind of they make the Final Four. Kind of who would be the hardest matchup for one of these other regional winners to play? whether it's the Kutztown defense or the Shepherd offense. Which
I
one
think
would
it's
be
gotta
harder
be
to kind of?
Bagent.
Yeah,
Has to be
I would
Tyson
agree with
Bagent.
that. I would agree with that. I know Shepherd's defense scares us, but he's really good.
All right, let's move on to Super Region 2, guys. Bowie State of Valdosta State. We'll start with you, Whit.
Look at K. Ferg. He's intently listening now. K. Ferg, do you have food at the door there? What do you got going on? You're starting to act a little bit uncomfortable. But like we're judging one of your children or something. But,
Oh gosh.
Anyway, I have loved Bowie. You can tell where I'm going with this, Bert. I have loved Bowie.
Hey, anything you say before "but" doesn't matter.
Pass it.
Just remember, it's on the internet forever. It's there.
I know. I've loved Bowie, and I really, you guys know how much I wanted to see Bowie go against West Florida and see how that would work. I think Bowie can do some things that are going to give Valdosta some problems.
Mm-hmm.
However
counts. Same as that.
I just think Valdosta's got too much, and Kay Ferg and I were chatting a little bit earlier. I think this is like a Ferrari going against a F350 turbo diesel here, and if the Ferrari gets ahead by too much, it's going to be a lot to ask for the F350 to catch up with them. I have a bad feeling if Bowie gets down 2 scores, they're going to be getting a standing 8 count from the ref, because it's like, okay, boys, you guys better really get going here, because the other one's starting to get their motor revved up. So I'm taking Valdosta here.
Okay, Chris Ferguson.
I get to pick last. This is my conference.
All right, we'll give you that, Justin.
Like he's going to be impressionable to what we have to say on this.
Yes. Justin, go ahead.
No, so I'm going to go with Valdosta.
Whoa, hold on. Whoa, stop. Chris.
They're both conference
Justin,
guys.
yes, Justin is the Gulf South columnist.
Then he gets to go his last 2.
He's going to last 2. All right,
what do you got, Brandon?
At the same time?
I'm going to pick Valdosta.
Yeah, I'm going to take Valdosta by a couple scores.
Okay, now you two.
We're sorry. The person you're trying to reach is not available at this time. Boy. Yes, I don't like this one because, my heart says we need to pick Bowie. We need to go with Bowie and see it all the way through. But this is an offense unlike any other with Valdosta. And that's what makes this really scary, because I just don't think, or I really question whether Bowie State has enough to keep up. This is not an offense that is a very strong offense. They need those grinded out games, and that's where the F350 reference is so good here. If it's a dirty, slog it out game, Bowie State has a chance. Otherwise, Valdosta is going to win this one. It won't be 66 points. I don't think so, but it's not going to be close. So with that, I'm sorry, y'all, but
Chris, I'll just write it down. We won't make you say it. All right.
Now before Justin goes, Ferg, when you go on your CU show and you're talking about this game, because you're going to get asked, are you giving the same answer?
Yes, I will be. I will give the same answer. I'll be consistent. Okay.
I wasn't sure if we were staying even keel with this across the board with the prediction. Okay.
Absolutely, I will. No, I think that Bowie's not going to have enough on offense to keep up. I just don't.
Okay.
Justin, what are your thoughts on the game?
Well, obviously, like I said, Valdosta, but I think you're right. I think defensively, Bowie can give some fits to the Valdosta State offense, but I think it's only a matter of time before something pops offensively. And then I don't know that Bowie State has enough firepower offensively to score on Valdosta as much as Valdosta can score. And then I would also tell you that I think that I think that having Valdosta having seen West Florida get upset, it's made them have a little bit more focus, a little bit more attention, a little bit more like this is not going to happen to us. So I think that they're on high alert this week and they're getting ready to go. So because I do think that Bowie State can give them some struggles, give them a hard time. So I think that ultimately Valdosta State's going to have too much for Bowie, but I think it may be a surprising game.
Okay. Move on to Super Region.
Chuck pick. Wait, what Chuck pick?
Oh, sorry. Chuck picked Valdosta State.
And the computer ratings?
The computer ratings, they have Valdosta by 24.
You've been disowned already.
It's all right.
You've already been disowned.
Chris was worried they would be mad at him. That CIAA fans would be mad at him.
They are.
He is just off the radar now. They're mad at Kenneth Massey.
I'm the stats right now. I have some backbone here, and I'm like, I don't know what to tell you guys here. I mean, the end of the road is kind of looking at us here a little bit, and I'm just wondering. Hopefully, there's a curve that just goes and not off the cliff. I mean,
Ferg, all you got to do is take a screenshot of Massey and what they have picked.
Yeah.
Which was 38-14, by the way. And you can just post that on your Twitter. No comments needed. And then you're off the hook for anything you say about the game because it's not going to be that bad, whatever you say.
That's right.
Ferg, were you pacing before the show just knowing that this was coming?
I was thinking longer. I had a nice little drive before I started the show and got to my computer about 20 minutes before. And I said, okay, first of all, our dear friend Chuck's not going to be here, and we're going to look out for him and carry the load in his absence. And the second of all, I said, oh, great, now I have to pick this game. And what am I going to say? Because I know I'm going to be the only one that even going to consider picking Bowie here. And second of all, do I go and have conference pride, or do I go and potentially go down in flames, or do you keep your record going?
I think you should have conference pride and help the rest of us win the pick'em.
Yeah. Well, and not many of us have to worry about our Twitter existence based on a pick we make in this game, but you did. So.
Oh, I'm going to catch lots of flack.
Well, you can handle it. You're the one we trust to handle it. Let's move on to Super Region 3, guys. Northwest Missouri, Ferris State. We're going to start with you, Chris.
I'm not choosing Northwest. I'm going with Ferris.
Okay, Ferg. All right, Justin.
I'm going to take Ferris, but I think a lot will depend on this game, on the health of the quarterback and can he play and what does that look like. But I'm going to take Ferris with this one, but I think it could be a much different game if the quarterback does not play for Ferris.
Okay. I picked Ferris to win the region. Even though Jared Bernhardt's hurt, I still am going to pick them to win the region. Devin.
No, let's go to Whit real quick. This is my conference.
This is
right.
This is a tough one for me. The moment that Bernhardt went down, I'm watching them. They threw so much of their offense through him, and then with the injuries at running back and everything else, I look at this and I think, you know what? There is no reason that Northwest can't beat Ferris State. I just think that Northwest has to believe that they can beat Ferris State. And there's a part of me that's not totally sure of that. Kind of like Grand Valley with Ferris as well. That said, I think this is a better Northwest team than the last few campaigns. I'm taking the Bearcats on the road.
Okay.
Now you have a message in the chat. Do not get.
Oh, I saw. I read it. I read it.
Do not get disowned here.
All right. Go ahead, Devin.
Okay. So I'm probably gonna get disowned here, but it's fine. I think Northwest has a great chance of winning this game, but going up to Big Rapids and being consistent offensively enough.
We don't even need the prepositional phrases, guys. Come on. I mean,
yes, it's gonna happen though. I gotta preface everything.
Thank you.
I don't know if Northwest is consistent enough on offense to go on the road and beat a team like Ferris State. We saw it versus Harding. They had a few splash plays, But outside those 2 or 3 splash plays, they didn't do anything on offense. It was all the defense setting everything up with it. And the way Ferris State plays in that offensive line, it matches up really well with the Northwest defense, in my opinion, because of how much window dressing they have. And it puts their linebackers in a real tough situation. I like the Northwest linebackers, but I don't know if they've seen a scheme like Ferris since 2 years ago when they lost them in the playoffs in the regional final. And then the year before that, in the second round of the playoffs, lost to Ferris as well. And also, I know Bert Hart is hurt for Ferris, but Hohensie's also out for Northwest. And they're much more consistent on offense when he's in there compared to Braden Wright, who did play decent there on Saturday and stepped up in big moments when they needed him to. But if it's both the backup quarterbacks playing, I think it's a close game. I think it's low scoring, 2017 kind of deal. And also for Northwest, I don't trust their kicking game at all, whether it's punting or kicking field goals or extra points at this point. So I think Ferris State, there's a little bit there. And Northwest has some turnover issues this year as well. So I'm going Ferris. I'm sorry, Bearcat fans. Also, Bearcat fans, 2 things going for you here. Chris picked against you last week, and you guys won. Also, the last time I picked against Northwest was the Pitt State game 2 years ago, and Northwest came out and dominated that game. So you're welcome for picking Ferris State in this one. Give me guys some confidence going forward with it.
Hold on. I've been throwing shade at everybody. Now's my chance to throw shade at Devin. He said Braden Wright played okay.
Yes.
He had like a 220 or 230 quarterback rating during the game. So playing okay means you would set the record for the best quarterback rating in the history of college football in a season.
Okay, his stats were much better than the eye test there on Saturday. He also had 2 or 3 big pass plays that really helped those numbers, which he made them, which great, but he wasn't consistent drive in, drive out, like you would expect a quarterback to be kind of deal. So that's just me personally just watching the game with my own eyes with that. He played well on Saturday.
I got you. If you expect perfection, you're going to be disappointed every time, though. Anyway, that's enough shade thrown at Devin.
The waters are warm in the defection pool.
So, all right, and Chuck picked Northwest Missouri State. So,
what's the
4 for?
I'm sure Massey has Northwest as well.
Well, we've talked about Massey's love affair with the MIAA, and it's deep. Deep to the point where the Bearcats are a 3-point favorite, yes, on the road.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. Which means what? By the Matt Witwicky Massey conversion, it means Ferris State plus or minus 21.
-4 probably touchdown.
Yeah, they probably have Washburn. They probably have Washburn even odds to making the trip to Ferris.
All right, let's go ahead and pick Super Region 4, Angelo State at Colorado Mines. Justin.
Ooh, this is the one I was having a hard time with earlier today. I'm going to go with Angelo State on the road.
Okay. I will pick Angelo State as well.
Okay, I thought I was going to go across the grain here, but I guess I'm going to stick with it here. I'm going to go with another Rams team here to win the Super Regional.
Okay.
Go with Angelo State. They're fast.
Whit.
I'm last.
Your conference is not the RMAC.
My Super Region. Just carry on.
Well, goodness gracious, it's my nation. I get to pick
It's
last.
my nation.
Lone Star all the way for me. So Angelo State.
Okay. Matt.
Really? We're going to do this, huh? Okay. I picked Angelo to be in my Final Four, which is, by the way, still completely intact.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I wanted to throw that out there in a very subtle, not subtle way. I am going with Mines. Here's why. Yeah, I'm not done. There's no but here. So Mines defends the run real well. That's what Angelo wants to do, and I think that they're going to do just enough. They don't make a lot of mistakes. That's a key thing come playoff time. I think that they have just enough. I think they win a tight game here, and Mines advances.
Okay. Chuck picked Angelo State. Who did Kenneth Massey pick?
Mines -3, which was quite a surprise to me because I figured the Lone Star would be getting a fair amount of love because they normally do with Massey.
All right. Well, we'll put those up and see how poorly we did next week. So let's go ahead and finish this thing off, guys. Let's look at some viewer questions, and they're either a million comments or a ton of questions. I'm not sure which. It's going to take me. It's going to take me a minute. Let's do this one first. Which number one seed do you all feel is the most likely to lose in the finals this week?
I picked Mines to lose, so
based on our picks, I think it's Mines.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mines or Ferris because they're playing Northwest.
But I think that the way that a lot of people are looking at it too, that Kutztown is probably the one to that's more likely than Mines to lose.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think you're similar. Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. K-Ferg, can Jerome Johnson make enough plays to give Bowie a chance for the big upset in Valdosta?
Can he make enough plays? He's got to make a lot of plays. This is a Bowie State defense that is going to take a lot of shots from Valdosta on Saturday, and we've kind of seen when Bowie gets a little aggressive on offense that it seems to kind of work in their favor quite a bit. So the other thing I'm concerned about is his health because I mean he took some shots and you saw him get carried off the field at one point and he wasn't running. He was really passing the ball. So if he's able to run and be multidimensional, then yes, I do think that Bowie State has a small chance to turn the tables here. But you really need him to be healthy to do it because otherwise Valdosta is just too good of a team to slow the other parts of their offense down. And I do want to mention here that the other problem with Bowie State is Khalil Wilkins, their leading running back, really didn't play for about a quarter and a half against Newberry. So, I'm kind of wondering, if there's something up with him as well. But if both of those guys are slowing down, then it might be a pretty long day on Saturday.
Right.
Well, no matter what, and Matt and I were talking about this, the players on the Bowie State roster have to love Jerome Johnson to play. They either think he's the softest player in history or the toughest guy in history because he gets hurt and comes back. And my thought is that they love that guy. I gotta think they do.
Oh, he's now legendary status on campus.
Yes. So Calvin wants us to explain the reseeding that takes place in the Final Four. How is it determined who gets the home game? Just the easiest way to do is imagine we started with a 4-team playoff. And whatever the criteria to this point would be. So, somebody who played a bunch of one-loss teams or undefeated teams, their strength of schedule would improve more than somebody who happened to play a 3-loss team. I don't know. So the best two teams with the best criteria will be the two home teams, and the other two will travel. And it'll be interesting to see how it happens because it might surprise some people this year. Let me just look. Sorry, guys.
Brandon's got to weed through all the Grand Valley State, Ferris State fighting in the comments this week. It's hilarious. I was enjoying it.
I have not touched the comments. It says there's 140 comments up there.
Yes, well, a lot of them were some idiot that we had to ban. But,
that wasn't good.
Yeah.
There was some talk about some snow removal process.
There's a lot of food talk.
That was good.
There's a lot of food talk.
But while we're waiting for that, Brandon, that Final Four, if Ferris were to advance, Ferris is clearly going to be the 1 seed in that because they're undefeated and they've got a decent SOS. Then Valdosta would be the second best in that beauty contest, given their off the charts SOS. So those teams would be the ones that you would look at probably immediately. And then from there, it's just going to be, let's see what happens. But
which team do you think is the least likely to host a playoff game if they make the Final Four?
Well, Angelo's got 2 losses. Are they the only 2-loss team in this field right now? I think they are, aren't they?
Yes.
I think so, yeah.
Yes, they
So,
are.
I mean, now they've got a high SOS. They were at like 570, 560, which is a high number, but it's not going to overcompensate for that one win difference or one loss.
And usually, Super Region 1 has not been favorable getting home games in the Final Four as well in this new format as well that we've seen in the past.
Yeah, I mean, I don't recall how good Shepherd's SOS was. Kutztown, I think, had a pretty good one. That's why they were the 1 seed, weren't they? I think
so.
that's why they had to be. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
And they beat Shepherd head-to-head as well. That helps.
Yes.
So lots of comments, guys. Ton to sort through tonight.
So Shepherd's quarterback is 3 touchdowns away from the D2 record. That's impressive.
Yes.
That's why he's the favorite for the award. He's a stud.
This was a comment from Joe about how the SIDs might factor in when a player doesn't play due to injury. I don't think there's any way to know the answer. I would say there's, if there's 100 different voters, there are 100 different ways.
I think a good example, didn't Toriana Clinton get injured?
He did. He played 9 games, I believe.
Yes, I mean, those numbers would have been trending towards that 2,000 mark that we were talking about with that 10th game,
Yeah, you'll have that, and then you also have the Bernhardt kid from Ferris got hurt a couple of times, so his numbers aren't up there to the top. He won't have the Gotti number. I think that's where this kind of comment steamed from. It's one of those deals where availability is number one ability kind of deal. I think that hurts some people.
Absolutely.
With getting hurt.
So, all right, here's the last question we're going to take tonight, guys. Is the old rotating regions method of determining the Final Four preferred over the current one? What do you guys think? What are your thoughts?
Personally, no.
You don't like the predetermined regions?
No, I think it's at this point. I think it's okay to reseed them to kind of figure out the best 4 teams. That way, you don't have a potential national championship, which we've had that still with the current system, where you would have maybe the 2 best teams meet in the semifinals because of the numbers. So it's not a perfect system either. We've seen that before. I know in 2015, Northwest played West Georgia in the semifinals, and that was the national championship game because West Georgia was every bit as good as Northwest that game. I remember listening to the players in that team talk, and they said they had played West Georgia 10 times. They might have beat them once or twice. It just happened to be that Saturday because West Georgia was that good. And they went on the next round and they played Shepherd, and that game wasn't close. So it's one of those deals where it's not a perfect system, but I think it's better than having predetermined.
So this question to me is what emphasizes that the out-of-conference play? Because things like the opponent's winning percentage and the quality of opponent factors into the process now. And I know we talked about teams having a hard time finding opponents to play. But in this example, the way that you have to reseed teams, that criteria now comes into play. So this is to me, this is a more preferred format than the old rotating regions.
Yeah, no doubt.
All right. Well, Chris, you get the last word tonight. Again, everybody, thank you very much for watching. Again, spread the word. You are our marketing team. Like, share, subscribe, all that stuff. We'll be here again next week at the same time. And again, until then, thanks for watching.